I think that there is a theme that runs between anybody that I know who has achieved anything. And I am a polar explorer. I was part of the first women's team to walk all the way to the South Pole and from land to the North Pole. It's a record that has never been broken and still stands today. I've got... Thank you! I've worked with NASA, the European Space Agency, but where does all that start? And that's why I was thrilled to step into those shoes, because actually for me it started at school. I didn't go on to higher education, but it was school and education that changed my life. I originally went to a comprehensive school that wasn't that great, it's fair to say. I come from an estate in Bradford, and it just didn't encourage its pupils. And I wasn't a bad pupil or a good pupil, I just bobbled along, but I was never going to get any qualifications. I'm the youngest of 5, none of my brothers got any qualifications, and that was fine by me, we all survived very well. But my parents moved house, and it was traumatic to me because, I've been here all my life and now I'm in this new place. I was partway into my, what would be a GCSE level if I was going to do education properly. About 6 months in, and they moved me. And I went to this school that was very different. I had to get a couple of buses to get there. And in this school, the teachers encouraged the pupils. And I started out in class, and I just sat there, not really paying much attention, but everybody worked, so I better do something then. And it was one of the teachers, it was maths, and who knew? He did an equation, and because I was paying attention, I kind of put my hand on my when I don't think you got the right answer. And never quite had anybody say that before, but instead of putting me down, this new person who was at the bottom class who never was going to achieve anything, he went, well, why do you think that, Anne? So I went through it and explained, and he said, okay, I'm not sure why you're wrong. But I'll think about that and come back to you. And at the end, he pulled me to the front of the class and said to me, you actually are quite bright. And just from that, I'm going to move you to the front of the class and I'd like to work with you. Nobody had ever said I was bright. Nobody had ever said I could achieve things. We didn't encourage each other in my family. Great parents, I'm not saying they're not, but we were never encouraged to believe in ourselves. So he started to work with me, and actually, as it turns out, I'm quite good at maths. Then he didn't hold on to me as himself, this one little pupil that he'd managed to turn around. He spoke to the English teacher, the geography teacher, the history teacher. And all these teachers began to tell me I could achieve. So I started to work probably for them, if I'm honest, to begin with, because they believed in me and I didn't want to let them down. 18 months it took me from not looking at getting any qualifications. I left that school, it is O-level time, when I'm that old, with 9 O-levels, A's and B's, because teachers believed in me. And what that did is it set me up for the rest of my life. I went on to get a job in a bank. None of my family had ever worked in white-collar industry or had anything that was a skilled job. And then I worked hard because I have now learned that if you work, you might be able to move up. And I started to move up. And I'd got the career of my life. And I loved it. I still love it. I loved it. And I was going to have a child and go back to the bank. And if I worked really hard, I might get to junior management. But life is full of changes. You've got me here today. And what happened was I started to have a child. Well, that's not quite true because on my first scan, I'm having 3 children. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not going back to the bank because I wasn't earning enough money for childcare for 3. But that's all right, because bringing kids up is great. I was still fulfilled with happiness, and it's a challenge, 3 kids. I don't care whether you've had kids or not. Anybody with an imagination can understand. It's a challenge. But I loved it. I wanted it. This will be fine. And my husband was going to carry on working. I'd give up. Job's a good one. A few months down the line, triplets are tough. I'm facing divorce, bang in the eye. It's not something I wanted, and it's not about blame. It just was where I found myself. I'm in a situation where I'm feeling worthless, I don't know what my future holds. And it's times like that when sometimes we dig deep and what am I going to do? And I didn't know. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then somebody showed me an advert. I mean, don't try and read it. It breaks all the PowerPoint regulations, but it was this. And it was in the Telegraph, and it's 6 women wearing very odd shoes, and they don't look like skiers. And it was asking for ordinary women to apply to be part of the first all-female team to walk to the North Pole. And I read it. I've never skied. I've never been outdoors. I came from Bradford. I didn't know how, rucksack, boots, maps, nothing. I had no skills. But I thought, well, first I thought, not for me. And then I began to think, if you don't try, if you don't put yourself forward, then you're never going to get this thing. And even if I just go on this selection, it will be something that will kickstart my self-worth, I guess. And so I applied for selection. I didn't have any of the kit to turn up, but I lived in a military town, and this is where teamwork comes in. I don't care where it comes from. I spoke to them. They lent me everything I needed. Well, they gave it to me. It was all an orange, olive green colour. Didn't ask where it came from, but I'm off. So I went to Dartmoor for this selection, and the weather was atrocious. Thank goodness, because there were 250 women applied, and of the over 250, I was the only one with no experience. They were outbound instructors, they were mountaineers, they had done everything, and I was the only one who'd done nothing. And if they had chosen the team that weekend, I would not be with you today. But at the end of the weekend, they said, right, you know what we want from you. And I was in pain. I just managed to keep staggering behind people. Couldn't navigate, couldn't do anything. You know what's expected of you. Come back in 9 months' time. We're not going to get rid of anybody. And then we'll select the team. And that's when I had the choice to make. Because I know you offer the courses, but it's continued personal development, business development. We don't stop learning when we leave school. Whatever it is, I might have decided to go to uni. Maybe I wanted to do a maths course. I had to learn how to read a map, how to perform on Dartmoor. Whilst looking after 3 kids, and I had nobody looking after them. I was on my own and no family near me. So I worked a plan. I went to a local gym. Can you sponsor me? Because I don't have the money for it. They went, yep. It had a creche. When the children were asleep, they were only 18 months of age. By the time I was training for this, I was out in the patio. My military friends taught me how to do all kinds of exercises. And it was marginal gains. When I did my first day of exercise, I wasn't fit. Not long ago, I had children. And so I maybe did 20 minutes and then added another 5 minutes. And then that worked, and I got okay, and then I added another. Because small improvements over a period of time can achieve so much more. And by the time I went back down to Dartmoor, I was fit. I knew how to read a map. I could carry my rucksack. I even knew how to pack it, which who knew I didn't even know that properly. And I went back down. The instructors remembered me as I walked on in. All the wrong reasons, but they remembered me. And I know them all now. They went, God, when you walked through the door, we were horrified. But this time I could help, and I could be part of the team. And I could do anything they asked me, and that's what I did. And so after 4 days, and we were camping in the middle of nowhere, we were abseiling at night, we were navigating, we all went into a little barn, and they called the names out of the team. And I couldn't believe it, they called my name out. And I'll talk to you about world records, and I've been to Buckingham Palace, and I've worked for NASA, but that was my biggest achievement in life to get, because I know what it took, and I know what I had to do and the people that helped me in the learning. That's my biggest achievement. And I wasn't the best. It was a team of 20 women. I wasn't the best 20. It was all of us. It was almost the softer skills. Of course we needed to know how to read a map and all the right things, but everybody knew that. It's were we prepared to give everything? Were we prepared to be generous? Were we prepared to help? And it was those kind of, and will we just keep going when it was counted? It was those skills that got us on the team. And so I won't talk much about the first expedition, but it was a relay. It was a team of 5 teams of 4 women, and we were walking in relay format to the North Pole. So on that occasion, I didn't go the whole way to the North Pole. I was in the first leg of that journey. It was a great honour because they put the biggest, strongest on the first leg, because that was going to set the team up, the rest of the teams up. But equally, I'll talk about a North Pole expedition, a different one. When you leave from land in Canada, all the ice rucks towards land. It moves towards the land. So you've got huge ridges that you've got to get your weight over, the sledges. And then on top of that, you're going in just after the winter. So it's at the real coldest months. So we went up to the very high Arctic. We had 2 guides because obviously we didn't have the skills to walk on sea ice. And the first team left. The ice was beautiful and thick. And yes, it was tough, but it was also incredibly beautiful. And that's where I fell in love and thought, this is what I was meant to do for the rest of my life. And that team, we knew if we worked the hardest we could work, we weren't getting to the pole, but it would help the success of the mission. So we did everything we could. We passed the virtual baton to Team Bravo. They passed it to Charlie Delta. And finally, on the 27th of May, 1997, Team Echo stood on the pole. We'd done it. I was back at home. I lived in Somerset then with my children. They were 3 now. And I got the call on an old-fashioned telephone in my landing. I didn't even know they'd arrived because there was no Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But when I got that call and I was told before it hit the TV they've got there, the thrill and the joy was enormous. Because everybody, it's all your success. It's not just the people at the top, it's everybody's input and skills that count. And so from that, 5 of us got together and we wanted to put an expedition that was ours, not led by guides or put together by an outside company, that was ours. And so we thought about what can we do? And we decided that the South Pole was the place to aim for. No British women had skied there when we put it together. And it's an easier expedition than a North Pole because you're on a static piece of ice. It moves very slowly, it's an ice cap, but it's on a continent. So it's not constantly moving and breaking. And the South Pole is 700 miles from the edge. Mostly all you see all day long is wave upon wave upon wave of ice. It's as much about the mind as the exhaustion, because you just keep skiing one behind the other every day. But eventually, if you keep going, and we did, 61 days later, we arrived at the South Pole. And it's a continent, so there is a scientific base there. We skied on in, 350 scientists who all came out. Because when we went, it was 1999, we set off, and we arrived just over the millennium. People didn't do it. There were still very few people going to the South Pole, and certainly women didn't do it. The whole base ran out. They greeted us, they took us in, and we got to learn about all the scientific work they did there. It was a real privilege. It's an American base, and so they took the obligatory photograph with our Union Jack. They were so respectful and lovely, just over our heads. We had to do a lot of clipping. It's the biggest stars and stripes in the world. But we're all a little bit loyal, whatever country we come from, so down it came. But I began to guide my children and get a little bit older. Oh, I have to say this because we haven't got a question and answer, and everybody always wants to know what happened to the kids while I'm out there. Contrary to some of the, it was always Anne Daniels, mother of triplets, goes to the pole, and then it might be she abandons or da-da-da-da. They were looked after by my parents, who moved down from Yorkshire to my house the whole time I was away, so that my children's life didn't change. Because, you know, you've got to sort out what your domestics are. And then when I came back, they left the day after, running down the drive. But they were my great support. So I began guiding shorter expeditions, and I had that dream. I was guiding 10 multinational men. It was a short trip to the North Pole. We were last 60 miles. And it was there, I was working with them and thought, I want to put the team together that goes the whole way from land. It has not been done. And so I asked Caroline Hamilton in the middle and Pom Oliver at the front if they would join me. They were on the last leg of the relay, so they had been to the North Pole. And at first they were hesitant, but I believed in us. And it was a vision. If you don't believe in your vision, how can you bring your people with you? And I did, and I believed we could do it. So eventually they agreed that they would join me. To go to the North Pole, for a full record, you leave from land. We left from Ellesmere Island. If you leave from Greenland, Svalbard, Sweden, and various other places, the ice moves so fast you cannot get to the North Pole. You'll be swung out the Greenland Sea or the Beaufort Sea. The only two places are Russia, and it was then the Northwest Territories of Canada. It's now gone back to none of it. I thought I knew what we would have to face. I'd been on the first leg. It's the coldest. I knew that. Temperatures, when I did my first expedition in 97, the coldest were about minus 38 Celsius. That's cold. On this expedition, for the first 27 days, temperatures were between minus 48 and minus 56 Celsius. It was horrific. I've been going out there years and years afterwards. It has never been as bad. We weren't the only expedition going. Expeditions were out within 5-6 days, and all we could do was keep going. And it was important in those days to remember I had put this team together and was responsible for them. And so how I felt and how I portrayed myself every day would affect the day's mindset. If you get up, you know yourself, if you get up and you've got to work and you're in a bad mood, then it affects everyone. Or even if one of your team's in a bad mood, it affects everyone. So it's in those times when it's difficult that it's important to just think about how you portray yourself. And I didn't lie, I wasn't happy-clappy. I would wake up every morning and feel the horror of it. And though I'd put it together, I always made a cup of coffee first thing, lit the cookers, gave the girls their coffee and woke them up and just, we can do this. Our sledges will get lighter. It was never, oh, we're going to make it. We can keep going. We can do this. We checked each other's faces constantly because it's all the team looking after each other. And after a hard day's slog, we would get into the sledges, melt snow and ice, make dehydrated food, hot tea. And like you, resources are not never-ending. We had to carry everything. So we had a mug and a spoon. We didn't take bowls or knives and forks. We didn't have any soap. We didn't wash or change our clothes for 80 days. Let's not exaggerate. 80 days. But we had to make the sacrifices to get there. We knew that the ice would change. It is a changing world. Everywhere we go. We put the tent up on day 7, and this piece of ice did not exist, that cliff, when we put the tent up. Our tent's somewhere here, and it was all flat. Middle of the night, if you can imagine the sound when that broke, and the fear as all the ice around the tent's beginning to crack. We went into our routines, we had practice, we'd been out there and we knew the dangers, but it's still terrifying when you have to do them. My job was to be inside the tent and fling everything out as fast as I could. Pom's job was to check it in the nearest sledge as fast as she could. And Caroline's job was actually just to let us know when the last second came and we had to get out of there. And I've got to tell you, while I was in the tent and I can feel the ice and hear it breaking, I wanted to go out and check. But if I'd have gone out, it would have wasted valuable seconds. So I had to trust. And trust is a big thing. Trust your team members to know what they're doing and let them get on with their job. And I did, and it wasn't easy, but I did. And we got out of there. As we're skiing, the storm's coming up because ice cracks a lot in storms. So I said, right, let's get the tent up. We've not had breakfast, get the tent up. Whilst we were looking for a safe place to put the tent up, the storm was raging. And we were experts at putting tents up. We had to just stop, and what we're going to do, we can't get the tent up, it's ripping out of our hands. And so thinking of solutions, it was Caroline that came up, we're just going to have to put the material on the ice, put the bags underneath it, wedge it down with our sleeping bags and lie in it. And we lay there for 3 days, not knowing when the storm would stop. And we couldn't control the weather, we couldn't control when it would end, we didn't know when it would end or the temperature. So we had to let go of the things that we couldn't control. What we could control is how we dealt with it. And so we lay there. Every so often we'd yell at each other, even though we were next to each other, "Oh, are you okay? Yes." And that was it. And after 3 days, the storm stopped, and that was our encampment. We came out. So what do you do when it's the best travelling day and you're so far behind schedule? Well, we just took the day off. we took the day off, we put the tent up, we got in it, and we just sat there and ate 3 days' worth of food and drank. But more importantly, we regrouped and talked about the difficulties we'd gone through and how are we going to keep going. It was really just simple. We're going to get out every day and do the best we can do today. The terrain is all very broken, and because of the coldness, there was nothing we could do to warm up when we were in the storm. We couldn't light cookers, we couldn't pull sledges to get warm, so we got frostbite of the fingers. That's Caroline's when they're better. She couldn't do the job she was supposed to do and that were hers to do because she had to keep her hand covered with 3 and 4 layers of gloves. She couldn't even go to the toilet on her own. Some motherhood skills I never thought I'd have to use. But instead of worrying about what she couldn't do, and oh gosh, I can't even go to the loo on my own, she thought about what she could do, and what she could do was pull a sledge, and possibly most importantly, to keep her not happiness, but her ability to not let it get her down, and the team, and support the team emotionally. The terrain going to the North Pole is nothing like the South Pole. It moves, it's cracked, it's broken. On day 37, we had an 80-day window. You've only got a window before the sun and the ice melts and various other things. We had an 80-day window. On day 37, nearly half of the time, we had only gone 69 of the 500 miles we had to go. And then we put the tent up that night and moved back further than we'd walked the day before. That was a morning. That was a morning, and how we knew where we were is I was a navigator, and I used the sun and my watch for direction and where we're going. But when we stop, we'll take a GPS reading. You can't use it for navigation. The batteries don't last that long. The screen doesn't work. And then in the morning, you do another reading. So that's how we knew where we were at any one point. If Caroline's fingers were bad, Pom's toes were horrific, and she had wet gangrene. So each night we'd take care of her, we would change her dressing. We had a resupply on day 47. Day 47, we've got a resupply coming in. If we called the plane before that to take any of us out, that's the end of our expedition. So Pom skied till day 47 on those feet. Not for her goal to come true, but so that the expedition would succeed, because she had to leave on that flight. So we had 30 days plus a couple to get to the pole if possible. And we lost our motivation. We were slow, we were going in circles. So again, we stopped. And instead of thinking about, oh, we have to do it for us, we've got to do the best we can do for Pom. And she was our motivation. As you're getting closer to the pole, there's more areas of open water, more areas of thin ice. And so again, instead of worrying about what we couldn't do, what can we do? We looked for the solutions. Sometimes it might be just jumping on a piece of ice in between. But we had this thing in our sledge. Nobody swims in the Arctic Ocean. They just don't. Read any books of the old explorers, they didn't do that. But we knew if we didn't take that risk, that we would not get there. So this plastic arms and legs thing was in our sledge, and eventually we had to do what we were afraid of and get in. And it was awful to begin with, but we realized that actually was working. That was the thing that was going to change everything. And then we got better at it. So we started to put our sledges in and go behind it. We used our sledges as bridges. We extended our days, anything to keep going. And then 2 days before we got to the pole, I would do a comms call to our base so that we would know, update them every 3 days. And I called and they went, we're on our way. And it takes 2 days for the plane to get to us. So there's never going to be a pull the cord and you're out. So we had 2 days. We didn't sleep that night and we kept going. But it wasn't until we came over the last ridge, was the first time we went, we're going to do this. We've got hours to go. We're going over. We can't hear the planes, but we think we can. and then we hit it, the North Pole. We made it. We got there. This is a picture. We put the flag in. We sang the national anthem at the top of our voices. We put our best dresses on because you've got to celebrate. We had a drink and we thought about Pom. We had some beef and potato stew. The papers, we hit every front cover. Anne Daniels and Pom Oliver, the first women in the world to walk to both poles. But actually, Anne Daniels and Caroline Hamilton, it said, it's a mistake. It wasn't. It was Pom Oliver, Anne Daniels and Caroline Hamilton, because if it hadn't been for her, we would never have made it. So what do you do when you've done your world records? Well, for me, I know you're big on sustainability because I looked at your website. And what I wanted to do was to use my skills to do something, it sounds grand, the good of mankind. Any small thing that I could do to help was what I wanted to do. And a guy called Penn Haddow put together the Catlin Arctic Survey. So we were working with scientists. And we were the first expedition to be given a Royal Sledge pennant since Shackleton was given permission to fly the Union on his South expedition. So it was huge. Penn asked me if I would physically lead the expedition. So he was the leader. I was physically, if you want to call me the navigator, the pathfinder, I was at the front so that he could do the science. And he asked me of all the people, and I have to say, for all you women out there, we're rubbish at this, because I went, why me, Penn? Is it because you could tick the diversity box? And he was a great leader. He went, no, Anne, because you're the person for the job and you are good enough and you're the best. Okay, thanks. And he was just so brilliant to give me that faith. And he shouldn't have needed to, but he did. Martin Hartley took photographs so we could share it. And Penn every night drilled through the ice. We crossed so much different ice, and we crossed areas and areas of thin ice that I have never seen the like of before. It is disappearing up there. I'll give you some idea. There we go. After 73 days, we finished that expedition and David Shuckman came on in. It was so successful, the following year, Charlie Patton moved in for Penn because we were now working with more scientists and he was needed in other ways. My job was exactly the same. This time, we changed how we swam through the water because you can change just because something works. And the guys didn't want to get in. So they would dress me up send me off while they rafted the sledges, and I pulled them across. Just simply pulled them across as with the rope, and we found different ways. We did science at the pole. We were collecting water to look at the changing chemistry of our oceans. And then the following year, I'm going to show a video rather than me talk to you about this. I moved on in again. There was myself and Tyler Fish. We were both leading this expedition because we had an actual scientist, Adrian, and a filmmaker, and then we could both pick each other off. And this is what we were doing.
In March 2011, 4 of the world's toughest explorers were dropped into the frozen Arctic Ocean. Their mission? To measure the thickness of sea ice in the most extreme conditions on the planet.
Minus 20 at the moment, it's nothing. This is great.
Braving temperatures of minus 75 degrees, they forced their way through Arctic storms towards the North Pole to collect data that will provide the blueprint for our future.
It's melting from below as well as above.
Their bodies under constant attack.
My eyelids are beginning to freeze up.
Their habitat the most hostile of all. And our cameras alongside them every step of the way.
It's closing in on us. That's how it goes. It's like some sort of roulette game.
In 6 remarkable weeks, these hardened experts were at the mercy of the brutal Arctic weather.
This is just ridiculous.
Putting their lives on the line.
We misjudged the length of rope. Are there sharks in the Arctic Ocean? I think so. Pretty sure. Great whites, right?
Sacrificing their safety in the name of science. This epic journey took them into the heart of the North Pole.
We are still in the middle of nowhere. And where are we going? Closer to somewhere.
Cut from the toughest cloth and spurred on by the thrill of risking it all. They are the mavericks of elite exploration.
6 o'clock, people, it's time to get up.
It's the dawn of another day. The demise of the bag.
I thought you wrote, when you were a young chap, to Sir Ranulph Fiennes saying, Sir Ranulph, I want to be a polar explorer. Is that...
I was obviously mistaken at the time, wasn't I? I hadn't actually been to the poles.
He thought Santa was here and his little reindeer.
I'm happy to work hard, but I don't like the cold much.
You'll see every dramatic twist and turn
Can't believe it's right.
as the team cross one of the coldest places on Earth.
It's very cold, it's minus 52.
Pushing the boundaries of human endeavour,
I feel as if I've lost a stone or more.
facing conditions the body and mind has rarely experienced. From the threat of frostbite and exhaustion, they must fight through blizzards with the ever-present danger of polar bears.
I had my head down, I was looking, skiing, and there they are. Some polar bear tracks.
And the constant threat of falling through the ice.
The whole raft of ice was bouncing up and down.
If somebody falls there, they're going in.
Captured in high definition and a worldwide exclusive. This is North Pole, living on thin ice.
Just finally, I was leading a group, it was the last 2 degrees, and I got a personal project. I met the head of Ice Bridge program from NASA. We were chatting and I said, can I add anything to what you're doing? I don't know why I thought I could, but as it turned out, I could. And what he did is he went, yeah, there's a project that's been mothballed and it's to put in tracking beacons for the ice. Could you do that? I went, yeah, I can. So whilst I was doing something else, I took the tracking beacons. The year after I was looking after a film cruise, I contacted him again. And I went, I'm going back up there, John. He went, yeah, we've got bigger tracking beacons and it does other things. And take this. And so he sent me up a bigger one. And I have my own mission ice flow bar. Now is me. I have my own mission statement from NASA. Whenever I go up there, I will take some things up for them. They send me pictures of the tracking. And that sort of is what, it's not where the story ends, because none of our stories end. But we team, whatever, managed to work with all these people, not because I'm a super duper human being, it's because education and learning new things and supporting each other is to me the key. Resilience, keep picking yourself up, adapting to change. You've got to deal with me today, but you know, we change, we move, and to just keep moving forward, no matter how fast or slow, but we do it together. And when everybody in a team from top to bottom works to the best, that's when we can achieve so much more. So thank you for listening to me.